What up, people? Welcome or welcome back. I hope that this finds you when it needs to find you. I hope that you hear what you need to hear. And today's topic is all about vulnerability. Being vulnerable, being open and honest. And I feel something that needs to be noted about being vulnerable and being open and honest is that there is strength within weakness. There is power within vulnerability. There is something so courageous about the idea of being open and honest with yourself and with those around you enough to the point where you are willing to step outside of your comfort zone in order to grow. To put the fear of falling flat on your face to the side in the name of growth, in the name of your best interest, in the best interest of the relationship that is in front of you. I think that there's courage in that. And I think courage that we don't give ourselves credit for, or at least me. I know personally. And me personally, I avoid confrontation at all costs. I'm scared to interact most of the time. So being in front of a camera and being in a public place combined recipe for disaster in my head and chest. However, I'm still here, I'm still doing it, I'm still pushing through in the name of communication and in the name of growth. Because I feel that my purpose is bigger than myself, and I'm going to harm myself along the way if it's going to help me heal along the way, you know? And that's what being vulnerable is. It's putting yourself in harm's way, knowing that you could heal because you put yourself in harm's way. And that's scary, and everything that we talk about here is scary. So let's just be honest, you know? I think that there's something beautiful, you know, and I hope that being somebody that is, you know, afraid of confrontation, I hope that being that kind of person that when it comes to these people that I care about, if I do, I guess, confront them, if you want to call it that, I hope that they see that that means that I care about them 10 times more than they could ever imagine. Because I'm willing to scare the shit out of myself in order to grow alongside them. I'm willing to sacrifice the relationship to grow the relationship, you know, even if that is the relationship with myself. Even if that is just the way that I feel about me. And usually, the reason why we need to be vulnerable is because of the walls that we create within inside ourselves. So, maybe all of it is an internal thing. And maybe being vulnerable is in our head, you know? And I've noticed that as generations go on and as generations continue to, you know, as you get younger and younger and as time goes on and you are born into a different generation that's younger than mine, you get more sensitive. And I'm a very sensitive individual. And you have people that are in my generation that will look at me like, wow, that dude's sensitive as fuck. What a pussy. But you also have people, and probably more people than ever in this generation, that will understand that. That, you know, that see that and that understand that you are, you know, an in-depth individual and that there is more to life than that stigma, you know? And again, it's scary to stop, to look at yourself, to look around and say, this is what needs to change, and to put yourself out there. It's scary to put yourself out there in general, the same way that I'm doing now. But having that open line of communication is only going to grow you. Having that open conversation and an open door is only going to help you. It's only going to welcome good things in. And if you are able to be vulnerable and communicate, then anything that's bad that walks through that door, you're able to tell it, hey, I don't like when you do this or that, and then you can walk right out, you know? So yeah, you don't want to have an open door to everything, but if you have an open door to everything and you're willing to communicate, then you can have an open door to everything, and you can't be scared because you know you are willing to put yourself in and do the hard work in order to make sure that it's only positive that's around you. And it's scary. And I think one of the things that's scary about it is that you can lose people because of it. You can lose friends, you can lose family, you can lose pieces of yourself. But you have to ask yourself, what are you losing? You're losing people that you were meant to lose. You're losing a piece of you that you were meant to lose. You're losing things that you were meant to grow out of, that you were meant to grow without. So at the end of the line, or at the end of the day anyways, If you are growing with them or you're growing without them, either way you are growing. And that's something to be grateful for, and that's something that takes courage, and that's something that requires a sense of vulnerability that we were never taught. We weren't taught it in schools, we weren't taught it by past generations and our parents, we weren't taught it, by our friends. In fact, most people and most friends, would make fun of you for being vulnerable in that sense, and that's fine. That's the dynamic that some people have. And that, I think, is completely acceptable. I think there's a fine line between being sensitive and vulnerable, and there's a fine line between that and, being way too sensitive and not knowing how to take a joke. None of this means, be a bitch about everything. None of this means that anytime somebody makes fun of you that you have to, be open and honest, and as soon as they say that, say, hey man, that honestly hurt my feelings over anything. But if it truly did, then maybe it's worth talking about. And if they're truly a friend, maybe it's a conversation that will be worth having. Maybe putting yourself out there is going to pay off, And like I said, it's all about putting yourself in harm's way so that you can heal off the back of it. And that's a scary reality, But again, what would you lose? And if you're still growing, isn't that the purpose of all this? Isn't that the purpose of being vulnerable? Isn't that the purpose of being open and being honest? Is honest growth, open growth, a line of communication with yourself? And I think that there's something so beautiful about having an open line of communication with yourself and with those around you, because it shows that you are so stable within your core, that you are willing to stand on something, and that is basically the core of you. I don't know if any of that made sense. I don't know if any of that was supposed to come out the way that it did. What I'm trying to say is that if you're so willing to put yourself out there, to stand on the core of you, to be vulnerable about the core of you, to be vulnerable about the things that you need to stay in order for you to feel comfortable, then it's only going to help you. And maybe it harms others in the process, but maybe that harm will help them heal. Maybe you putting yourself in harm's way is the same thing that you're doing with them. Maybe you're putting them in harm's way so that they can heal, so that they can grow, And that's exactly what a wound is. A wound is something that hurts and then something that grows and heals off the back of that pain. And I think that that's something that's incredibly underrated, is being in pain in order to grow, I'm not saying that pain feels good. I'm not saying that you need to, constantly hurt yourself or hurt others around you. But you have to understand the pros and cons of every situation that you're in. If being vulnerable will help you or hurt you. And if that pain is going to, outweigh the joy that comes off the back of it, or if that joy is really worth it, So keep putting yourself out there. Keep being vulnerable, Keep looking around and making sure that people see your intricacies and making sure that you are yourself, honestly and openly. Because that takes courage and that will make you a stronger person. That will only help you grow. You will only become better off of the back of that, And that begs the question, how much of it is a loss and how much of it is a lesson? And that's another topic. I'll save that for a different one because I think that I can dive into that a lot. But I think sometimes the pros outweigh the cons. And if the con is simply you're embarrassed to be vulnerable, if the con is simply you're too scared to stand on the core of you as a person, then you need to really evaluate your priorities, And those that are around you that see your priorities and are willing to put them on a pedestal and are willing to grow alongside you. Those who, are around you that will put your priorities up on their priority list are worth it. But you only find that out by being vulnerable with those people. You only find that out by putting yourself out there and outside of your comfort zone. You don't grow inside of your comfort zone. You don't grow in a space where you are just constantly running away from the reality of yourself. Be open, be honest, be vulnerable, and don't hide from you, and growth will come from it. Thank you guys for listening. The train is coming, so I appreciate you guys. Be good. Peace out. I love you.